producers, and by those of us who have already fallen in love with the wines. My name is Abbott. I'm a master wine, and that was what first introduced me to Turkish wines, because about 6 years ago I was asked to be on a panel of 8 masters of wine to go and judge Turkish wines in Istanbul. And the setup was very different to any sort of judging I've done previously. All the judges sat on kind of like a wedding table at the front of the room. All the people who made the wines were sitting where you are now, and they watched us every single night. At the end of each round, our scores were analysed. They did a bit of sort of statistical analysis using standard deviation of the mean. And they then announced to the producers exactly where everyone on the judging panel had scored them. This went on during the day. The atmosphere became more and more interesting. And then after that, this was topped off by a carousel meeting in which each judge had a 5-minute kind of speed date with various amount of love. With each of the producers whose wines we had tried. And there's 2 things about this. First of all, I think it's very representative of the drive and openness of the Turkish wine industry. This is an industry that really wants to know what the world thinks and how to improve. And also there's sort of the kind of passion of the culture there. They really want to know. It's an open, sort of expressive kind of culture that you find in business as well as social situations. So since then, I've been back on average nearly once a year, and me and my fellow NWs have all seen, I think, a real finessing and improvement in quality. It was already on that way, but the thing about Turkish wine producers is that they need to export now as never before. And the benchmarking against export standards is driving a great sophistication and finessing of the style of Turkish wines. And that's the trend that we've seen over the last 5 to 6 years. We've got 8 wines, just over an hour, so it's going to be a bit of a whistle-stop tour. What I suggest is that we keep questions to the end, and then if there are further questions, I've got my details on this presentation as we go through the slides, and I really welcome emails, follow-up questions, etc. After the presentation. Can I just ask, has anyone here been to Turkey? Lots of people, okay. Before today, has any of you tasted Turkish wines? Sorry, Turkish winemakers, you're not included. So it's about half an hour. I just need to get one. Thank you very much to those of you who come and try it for the first time. Good selection of producers here. I've got 8 different wineries, 3 white wines, and 5 reds. Combination between this will show a range of Turkish wine regions, indigenous varieties, and international varieties. And before I start, I've just been asked to mention that the Benevolent, which is the charity for the wine trade, is here today. And they've paired up with Wines in Turkey. They're actually doing a business card draw. And if you put your business card in the Benevolent box, and if you feel like putting 50p or £1 in their collection box, do all better. But the winner of the business card draw wins a wine tour and tasting trip to Izmir and Istanbul in Turkey. So, and I've just come back from there. It's a beautiful and amazing place to visit, so I recommend doing the car. So, a bit of context. I love this map. I know it's not sophisticated, but the reason I like it is it really gets across that Turkey is a big peninsula. Black Sea, Marmara Sea, Aegean Sea, Mediterranean. And it also gets across the topography. See, there's a big range of mountains here. These mountains go straight up to funnel all the sea breezes in. Great big salt lake. I'm sorry, it's got slightly cut off, but then over here, you've got the border with Georgia, Armenia, Syria. This bit is the Fertile Crescent, where they're pretty sure vines probably originated. So it's just, vines love it here. It's an area of very many vineyards and has been absolutely centuries times. And just to give you that kind of context, it's a large peninsular country, about 80 million people, very young population, and straddling continents here. This is also Turkey. This is Bulgaria.
Greece. And Greece.
And Greece. I'm so sorry. And Greece. Sorry. Thank you. There's a great natural potential for vines. And actually, Turkey's wine industry, modern wine industry, isn't brand new. Really, the birth of modern Turkish winemaking was with the birth of the secular republic in the 1920s. And there was a thriving wine industry in Turkey, and these posters from the 1950s, which I just thought were rather cute. This one I chose because it really reflects the strong interaction with French wine industry during this time. So many French consultants were brought over in the 1920s, 30s, 40s and consulted on the establishment of vineyards. This is why you've still got in Turkey now quite a lot of Cabernet Sauvignon, Franc, Chardonnay. Lots of that came about because the establishment of the re-establishment of what had been an old industry under Ataturk, when he really promoted this, he used French expertise, and there's a very, very old trading relationship between France and Turkey that goes back to Ottoman times, and they had essentially a kind of free trade agreement. And Turkey was a net exporter of wines to France and to the phylloxeratic. That influence is still around today. You see a lot of French enologists and consultant winemakers and viticulturists working in Turkey. And many, many Turkish-born winemakers studied in France. Okay, just thinking about Istanbul, I mean, it's an international playground, a place where East, West, massive gastronomic scene, population of 14 million people, and it's an important, very important domestic market for premium wine producers in Turkey. So there is a domestic market for Turkish wine, and this market very much prides actually things they think of as exotic and new, so the international varieties. But as you may well be aware, it's becoming tougher and tougher for Turkish producers to be able to talk about and market their wines domestically, which is why there's this big new focus on exports. This I'm going to keep up because it will help us when we move on to the wines, which we're going to do now. Whistle stop context. I hope that wasn't too fast. Please do follow up with me afterwards with any questions. So, we've got 3 white wines, and I thought it would be nice if we tried them all together. So we've got wine 1, which is a Narinje. Narinje comes from this region here, Black Sea region. It's an indigenous Turkish variety, which means delicate. The second wine is from, so the first one is from a producer called Diren. The second wine is from a producer called Arcadia. This is from Thrace, northern Thrace, which is up here. And it's a blend of Sauvignon Gris, which the French call Fier Gris, and Pinot Gris. And the third white is from a producer called Castro Torelli, and it's a blend of Narinje and Viognier. And I must admit, actually, I'm not sure exactly where he gets his Narinje from. Is it here?
Yeah, it's Atisa, it's North Aegean.
Thank you, yes. So North Aegean. So Narinje originates here, but it's extremely well adapted, it keeps its freshness, and you find more and more of it being grown around Turkey. Thank you. Sorry, I had to ask. So, do you want to try the wines, and then we'll regroup and see what
Sırasıyla karıştırmadım.
It originates from actually that's the region and the region called Tokat here. And Tokat vineyards, you can see that at all, it's here. This is around Tokat. Tokat vineyards were established by Jesuit missionaries under the Ottoman Empire. So winemaking flourished at that time. It was very much practiced by, the sort of the Christian part of the population under the Ottomans. And this first Naranjay is from a producer called Duren, who are a big, good producer, already successfully exporting to the UK. And it's an example of a more delicate, fresh, unoaked, lightly refreshing, uncomplicated, but very accessible style of Turkish white. So they're moderate alcohol, gently refreshing acidity, and this sort of slightly almost bitter almond character that you find a lot in Naranjay. And the Naranjay skins, they're a little bit like the quality of some of the skin of white grapes you find around Campania. They have some phenolics. And these actually, as with those style of wines, they freshen the wine through a hint of bitterness rather than through a sort of whiplash of acidity. So you have this gently refreshing, very accessible, very versatile style. And this wine actually, this Naranjay, this was put on the Sommelier Wine Awards Gold List. It's very, very helpfully priced, nice, unoaked, crispy wine, and I think a good useful ambassador for Turkish wines, and it can often surprise people with its lightness of style. The second wine is over here. Sorry, this map doesn't say Vieille Gris and Pinot Gris, but there are some plantings there. Although like Claudia, who made this wine, they were the first producer in Turkey to plant Vieille Gris, which is the kind of the pink-skinned cousin of Sauvignon Blanc. And there are more of what people are planting it in Turkey. And it has a quality of sort of musky perfume. Again, this is an unoaked style, and Arcadia, a smaller producer, they use effectively biodynamic and organic influence principles in vineyard and winery. This wine has naturally very low sulfur. This winery works with smaller batches, natural settling, lots of aging on the lees, and this has got about a third as much of the kind of normal sulfur levels as a conventional white wine. So, Thrace, where this is from, over here, it's got a much more maritime influenced climate. Lots of wineries here are working with more of the European varieties. It's a more moderate climate, slightly cooler than what you go over into here. We're about to try another wine, a Thracian winery later, Barbare, who are also organic. And Arcadia, like quite a few of the wineries in the area, actually don't irrigate. They don't need to irrigate so much, in fact at all. It's an area of moderate climate, and white wines actually have this certain gentle generosity. What did you think? What do you think of those two? Any surprises? I love the first one. You like the first one? Usually in Ireland,
I like that one. It's too sweet, but this one was delicious. Really not that sweet at all. It's more acidic.
I'm just going to repeat what you said. So the lady said that she likes its freshness and it didn't have a sweetness. And what we have seen in the evolution of white wine making style in Turkey has certainly been an emphasis on more freshness, less oak, the vintages earlier to market. The domestic taste is actually for riper, richer, more aged styles, and it's that I think because there is a renewed emphasis on export, that kind of more that export palette, if you like, is starting to influence the ways that are being made.
So another question on that one. The lowish alcohol on that, is that down to where it is, or is it earlier picking?
So a little bit of both. So they'll pick, as you will all over the world, to get balance. Some plots you pick earlier, some you pick later. Topcat, where this is from, has got a sort of transitional climate, partly continental, a little bit of influence from the Black Sea, mountains here that protect it. And the thing about Narince, that all the native Turkish varieties are notably late ripening compared to the international varieties. And it's a deliberate stylistic thing there. They're looking for that lighter style. It's a little bit like when people pick Viognier. You can pick Viognier early, crisp, white peach, or you can pick it a bit later and you get the right phenolics from the skins. Narince can be a real chameleon. In fact, there are examples of riper, barrel-aged Narince, especially when it's blended with Chardonnay. It becomes a totally different thing, and still a nice thing. And then the Vieille Gris, the Sauvignon Gris from Arcadia, we've actually had a lot of success with this in restaurants, especially restaurants looking for unusual food pairings, because the texture and the kind of slightly sneaky aromatics of this Sauvignon Gris make it a really nice and an unusual kind of food pair wine. And then you've got the third wine, the Narince Viognier. This is 65 Viognier, 35 Narince. I love this wine. I must admit that I hadn't actually tried it until a couple of weeks ago, so thank you for sending it to us. Alcohol just over 13.3, nice fresh acidity, 5.8. Dry, and stainless steel, 6 months bottle age, and I think this is what I like about this is that it plays with the kind of phenolic textures of both grapes to give you a full flavour, but yet a crisp, clean, unoaked style. Nice saltiness, and this saltiness is something you get a lot coming through in Turkish whites, especially the whites that are, made with an eye to talking with that terroir. What did you think? So we've got a couple of restaurateurs here. I mean, I think that's the style of wine that you can put that in a glass and give it to someone, and it's actually full of character, but it's not extreme.
Actually, it's still it's a light wine. This is
So I'm just going to repeat what we said. So the gentleman said that Pinot Gris is a lightish wine. Yeah.
But you've got to get 14.5 liters.
Yeah.
Pinot makes a very heavy. The alcohol comes through. There's a mystical sense of alcohol.
I don't have a problem with Pinot Gris having a healthy alcohol. I was at a tasting of Alsace Pinot Gris yesterday. And Pinot Gris and actually the thing is that this is more Sauvignon Gris than Pinot Gris. But the thing about Gris grapes is that they have a bit of a split personality. So you've got more phenolics in the skin, more colour in the skin, and they take longer to fully ripen. So the way that you can approach this in Alsace, for example, is that Pinot Gris and the Gris grapes, you can decide to pick them quite early and you don't get full phenolic ripeness in the skin, but you get fresh, zesty, quite simple wines. Or you can do what Alsace do, which is you pick a full ripeness and you just let it luxuriate in its body and its richness. And I think that's a personal preference, because that kind of balance, the balance we have in this wine, 14%, 14.5, and then this, with that acidity, this absolutely classic balance that you find throughout Pinot Gris in Alsace. And it's significant that it's called Brie and not Brigio. So it's a stylistic approach. Do you have a question?
No, sorry.
Shush then. You're a good boy, gold star. So, I'm so sorry. More questions. I'm just conscious of the time. We've got another 5 lines, but please do grab me and come to the end. So red wines. We've got here 5 reds, and we've got 4 indigenous varieties. So Turkey actually has, this map will give you a bit of an idea. Turkey has hundreds of indigenous grape varieties. What happened after the Balkan Wars is that a lot of the established vineyards actually fell into neglect or just abandoned. And then you had the resurgence under the Turkish Republic, very much focus on international varieties. But they are being rediscovered and saved and restored all the time. I've got to show you today, I've got some Kujkazu and Boiscaré, which actually originate from over here, Elazığ and Diyarbakır. And some of these vineyards, old vine Boiscaré, are ungrafted, 60, 70 years old, gnarly old bush vines. And then you've got, and some of these I haven't even tried yet, because they're still, what happens is they'll go out, they'll talk to some old timers, they'll find a small parcel of vineyard, and then they'll go about basically process of re-establishing the vine and replicating the vines for planting. We've got some Kalechi Karası, has its home near Angora in the vineyard in the area of Kalechi. We've also got some Karasakis, which is all the way over here on the Aegean. And then finally we have got some Grenache from up here, where in Thrace, where Grenache seems to do really well. So would you like to try? Let's try wines 4, 5 and 6. That's the Kalechi Karası, the Karasakis Merlot blend, and the Kujkazu, and then we'll do the last 2 wines in a really bright. I'll do that. One here. The producer is Cavaco Dairy, one of the most established, big and vineyard-owning producers, successfully exporting to the UK already. Electric carousel means back from the small castle, and it's a native variety, native to the area in central Anatolia around Ankara. And it's actually a very light, vibrant, fresh style. Some people compare it to, I've heard it compared to something like Gannet. It actually reminds me a bit more of something like Corbina. It's something a bit more Italian in its sort of sour cherry freshness, supple tannin. And it's a variety that was rediscovered and then saved by an academic at Ankara University. So Ankara Technical University is one of the best universities in the area. I mean, it's absolutely top notch. And lots of research into native yeasts, vine varieties are going on in collaborations with Ankara, Istanbul University, collaborations with technical universities in France as well. And this is an example of a lightly oaked Kalechi carousel. You can actually find a style which is unoaked. You often see Kalechi carousel blended, blends quite well with Shiraz, and it's a lighter, fresher, supple, juicy style. And it can surprise people because, again, the idea is that there's a heaviness around Turkish wines, but actually, generally we find native varieties of any warm, sunny climates always have an ability to be mysteriously fresh. And I think it's because over centuries humans just select for that. We want that freshness. And Kalechi carousel, again, ripens relatively late, although earliest of the three that we're about to try. The next wine is a Greek variety called Karasakis, which I think translates as black sweet chewing gum.
Yes, yes, definitely, yes.
Black sweet gum.
Like gum, we like gum.
And this is, I love this wine. Now this really has a bit of a profile that I really associate with very Turkish varieties, in that just the Turkish palate is an exuberant, strong palate. Think of Turkish coffee, think of the food of Anatolia, you know, walnuts, pomegranates, you've got lovely spicing, mint, parsley, seasoning, lots of seasoning, it's a cuisine that loves salty food, loves meaty food, as well as the lovely salted fish and so on from the Black Sea. And this has something in it that reminds me of a little bit of the profile that you might find in an Italian red. So, good natural freshness, no new oak. We've really seen a move away from new oak coming out of Turkey. And, the alcohol is 14.6. Good freshness, 5.8 acidity. But it has this kind of nicely chewy, resistant texture. And I believe Laura's a buyer at the new very fine Turkish restaurant about to open with a very fine Turkish chef called Oklava. And it's this kind of thing that is quirky, characterful, interesting, and fantastic with the food of the Middle East and the Eastern Med. And a relatively small production, young winemaker, youngish. An Italian consultant. And then the third of this trio is the Kuşkuzu. And Kuşkuzu means ox eye, and it's more like, it's ox eye in the sense of an eyeball. It's not just the iris, it's imagine the eyeball of an ox. And big. I took this photo down in the Aegean, actually. Although Kuşkuzu originates in the east towards Elazığ, it's now grown more extensively all over Turkey. And I took this in Kabaklı'da Pendore vineyards, and they're huge. They're really big, juicy grapes, and they are really yummy. These are still on the vine at the beginning of October. So they ripen late, picked to mid-October. And Kuşkuzu is really friendly and useful. You can do lots of things with it. You can oak it, a little bit of new oak, you can blend it with international varieties. I've seen really nice Kuşkuzu Kalechi carousel blends, Kuşkuzu Shiraz blends. And it can be actually rather elegant and dense. It's got firm but fine tannins, very juicy, and retains naturally acidity. And it's, I so wish someone would come up with a brand and just call it Bullseye. Because it's the kind of, it's a friendly wine, it's an amenable grape to deal with. And once you get your head around the diagraphs, it's actually easy to say. And this is from a producer called Sevelen, and they are based on the Guinea Plateau, which is in the Aegean. Okay, so this is the Aegean, warm Mediterranean climate, and the Guinea Plateau is inland, very limestone-rich soils, and it's the bit of the Aegean where the high-quality vineyards are located. And you have got a lot of older vineyards here, so a lot of independent farmers, as well as vineyards that are owned and controlled exclusively by producers. Do you know these vineyards?
Yeah.
Yeah, you own it. I mean, what we have seen is that more and more of the producers like to be able to own their vineyards because it gives them the quality control. Because although Turkey's got a lot of vineyards, the wine culture, and in terms of actually producing grapes for high quality of wine, is something that they need to do a lot of work with when you're dealing with your farmers. So more and more there is this drive and this massive investment in owning, developing and managing their own vineyards. So what did you think of those three? Any preferences? Electric carousel? You like to have a vote? Who likes this electric carousel best? No.
Quite frankly, I'm not happy with the as well.
And the Okushkazes? Who liked the Okushkazes best? And what about the Karasakis? Karasakis. You've got to wrestle it. It's a wine that needs a little wrestle to the brand. But if you're up for a wrestle, I'd say it's pretty evenly split.
It's not a very known
So the question the lady asked is, it's not very well known. No, it's lesser known. It's a great variety that's existed. It's also very hard. It has sour acidity. Yeah. But no, it's lesser known. In the big three really that are well known is Akushkazoo, Kalechik Karasur, and Boisgray. And we are about to move on to a Boisgray. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Boisgray, just to prepare you. So Boisgray, before we try it, I just want you to be ready.
Boisgray.
Boisgray. Yes. How do you translate Boisgray, John?
Boaz is neck.
Neck.
And kere?
Throat.
Throat, yes.
And what's kere?
Throat. And kere is because of the high tannins. When you eat it or when you try it on the vineyard, it makes your, especially if it is not ripened enough, it makes your throat like...
Yeah, it translates as throat kicker.
yes, all right.
What is that, throat?
Throat kicker.
Throat kicker was the thing.
Or throat scratcher. Yeah.
Stress, yes.
I actually love it. But something that you do see around Turkish grape varieties is that the names are very descriptive, they're often very colloquial, and we start getting more and more of them that are being, the old vineyards are being either discovered, identified, and then there's a big cooperation going on with all of the producers and the technical services at Istanbul and Ankara universities to identify these vines and then get them into commercial production. And actually, when I was in Turkey last week, we are seeing that there's You see, the Turkish market, Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc and Chardonnay are sort of foreign and exotic. But what happens in export markets is that the indigenous varieties are kind of the thing that you use to build your brand of Turkey. So one of the things I've seen is that there's more and more appreciation in Turkey for their native varieties. And just because something's native doesn't mean it's automatically good. But there is this project going on to identify, to try the different native varieties. And the native varieties generally are made with a bit less oak or no oak. And you do have this, I think you get a lot of lovely, interesting textures and perfumes from the native varieties. And then the other trend is that we're seeing is that this lighter hand with the international varieties. And these two things in combination, I think, are really, it's come at a good time. We've seen a really good evolution in style that has made the wines, I think, much more accessible to an export market. Still very exuberant. I mean, this will always be exuberant, sort of outgoing wines. So, we've got two more wines to try. One of them, the wine 7, is from a producer called Barbare. And Barbare are over in Thrace. Down here, into Tekirdağ, and there's a very good technical university at Tekirdağ where lots of the wine makers and viticulturists, Turkish viticulturists, train. And it's predominantly Grenache. I know it says Syrah on the tasting sheet, but it's actually predominantly Grenache. Half of it's Grenache, and then a quarter Syrah, just under a quarter Mourvèdre, and then a tiny bit of Cab and Merlot. So this is essentially a GSM blend made by a Frenchman who comes from the Rhone. And this is an organic and biodynamic estate. And there's a nice little wine tourism, vineyard tourism industry opening up in Thrace. And Barbare, along with Arcadia, and Erla, who down here. But you've got these smaller producers are using a lot of tying into tourism to actually help promote their products and the fact that there is wine being made in Turkey. So you have a lovely guest house at Barbare and in Arcadia. So enter your business cards into that drawer because there's some very nice places to go visit. So we'll try these. Has everyone had a chance to try those too? Yes. Can we talk about wine made first, which is the Masquerade? So this wine is made by a producer called Vinkara, and Vinkara is part of the younger generation in the way of Turkish wineries that really thrived in the late 1990s and early 2000s when the wine industry was deregulated. When under Ataturk, all of the alcohol production in Turkey, apart from wine, was under state control. But in the late 1990s, early 2000s, there was a relaxation of some of the regulations, and it allowed lots of smaller producers, and then also not just smaller producers, but new producers, many of whom were founded by extremely successful business people from other sectors, because Turkey has a very, very strong entrepreneurial and manufacturing and tourism success story behind it. And you've got some extremely clever business people who love wine, who've got into wine and are seeking to really create world-class wine businesses. And they've done it with other things. And then I feel really sorry for them because and now I'm going to do it with wine. But you've got, so Linkara is established by a very successful family business whose core business actually is in tourism, and they have a chain of hotels which are called Marmara Hotels. And the thing about Marmara Hotels is that they're 5-star hotels, but with Turkish character. So they're not bland international hotels, and it's been very useful. These synergies really help the wineries sell their wines because it means they can have wine shops in their hotels, they have a market for their wines, and it's impossible to underestimate the challenges that the producers now have selling wine domestically. So these kind of synergies are becoming even more important. Now, Boiscaré is called throat kicker, and it reminds me a little bit of the reputation that people used to have for Nebbiolo. You know, Nebbiolo, this kind of big brute, a beast of a wine. Barolo, you couldn't drink it for 20 years. And if you now look at the wines that are being made with Nebbiolo, you think actually it's not that the thing is a beast, it's partly in how you treat it and the sympathy that you have for it. So Boiscaré does ripen late. So I took this photo, again I picked one of these grapes at the same time as I picked an Asian Kushkassu grape, and they all killed themselves laughing because I was my mouth was like that, and I had to spit it out. The juice is gorgeous, it is so tannic, and they have a saying, even the boars don't eat these grapes. So it ripens late, you know, mid-October and beyond, it's a late ripening grape, it needs a long season, but when it's fully ripe, and handled with a light touch, you get this lovely perfume and a kind of a nice and loose weave, but a grippy, resistant texture. And I think it's interesting with this wine, which has a nice, supple grip to it, that it's made by Italians. So the lady working at the winery at Vincora is an Italian lady. She has a PhD in enology and viticulture, and it's very interesting to me on how she handles it. So it's a light touch, gentle extraction, let the fruit come forward. And in fact, so this last wine, it's not actually a throat kicker, it's just a nicely kind of dense, perfumed, really rather classy wine. I've heard winemakers compare it to Tanat. And I think that's another good comparison, and intriguing aromatics. And I have had some older, not really old, but some aged examples of Boiscaré, and they've been really interesting. So I actually think Boiscaré is like the secret superhero of Turkish wine, but you know, it has to be planted in the right place, it has to be fully ripe, but it blends really well with other things. So there's a lovely classic blend of Kushkassu and Boiscaré. And if you can imagine the Kushkassu that we tried, and imagine this, you know, that's going to be a nice, good, fun, proper wine. And so who felt their throat was being kicked with Boiscaré, or who rather liked it? Yes.
Very tiny one I've got, say 20 or 30 years ago, I thought it had a good dollar of oxidation in it, something like that. It's very good colour.
Yes.
And so they've gone to sort of tertiary fruit.
Yeah.
It's a lovely aged character.
Yes. Yes, sorry, Jan.
Sarah,
Yeah, you need to speak up.
in Urla,
Yeah.
last year,
So this is so Jan is the the owner of an estate down in the Aegean, in Izmir, called Urla, which is imported by Arnott actually, and makes very good wines, which are listed in lots of
Thank you.
London restaurants.
we haven't harvested Boiscaré.
You haven't?
No.
Not yet.
And last year, the previous year, we harvested beginning of December.
Right, there you go. So he hasn't even picked his Wascombe yet.
Yeah, not yet.
As of today, it's on the vine. Yeah.
Very late harvesting.
Sorry?
This wine is pure Basque.
Yes, yeah, pure Wascombe, 100% Wascombe, 13.5% alcohol, 4.4 tartaric acidity, 3.6 pH. Quite a long élevage in oak. So this is the current release, 30 months in small barrique. But I don't think there's any new. She doesn't use any new oak, does she? No, she doesn't find new oak with it.
Very clear wine.
Yeah. So I wanted to show you that first, just because it kind of it probably should have been number 7 in the order, because actually the wine that we have got is number 7, Barbare, the organic biodynamic Grenache-based wine. So it's a very different style. And you can really taste and feel the way that I think when you get the international varieties planted in Turkey, it's like they're on a holiday. They really let their hair down. So you have high levels of ripeness. I mean, Grenache loves the sun, and we know that it loves. It can get to high alcohol. So this is 14.5% alcohol. 18 months in French oak, a little bit of new. In fact, I haven't got the exact percentage, but for me it tastes like there's a good dollop of new oak in this wine. And it's a style of wine that is absolutely loved and adored in Turkey. You know, it's very rich, it's glossy, it's a big dollop of kind of toasty, smoky oak. Nice spice coming through, and small production. And what you get, especially with these smaller producers, is that their domestic market for tourism, especially for those that are within an hour or so of Istanbul, is extremely important to them. And their restaurants and their kind of, if you like, their cellar door sort of culture is extremely significant in helping them develop their sales. But I'm sure you would have seen, Turkey's been in the news a lot lately. They've had a lot of new challenges. In 2013, new laws were brought in which actually has forbidden winemakers, any alcohol producers, from proactively talking about the marketing of their products. So there's been a lot of creativity around promoting vineyards, vineyard activities. And I would just say that we are extremely fortunate in the UK trade in our openness and accessibility to wines from all over the world. This is a very competitive market. Producers who can sell their wine like that in their domestic market have to lower their prices and really push hard to sell here, but they want to. And I think the thing about trying these different wines, these unusual wines, is great for us who've never heard of. For me, I love it because it makes you think about what is considered beautiful in a different way, which is a really nice thing to do in life. And we have, the UK trade, we have the potential to do this. You know, if there's one market in the world which is brave enough and creative enough to actually bring these wines to market, to explain to the consumers, help people find what they like, and actually help an industry such as Turkey, not just Turkey, Lebanon's having a hard time, Georgia's having a hard time, but we are actually significantly important to the long-term survival and eventually kind of the taste diversity of wine in the world. And that's why I love working with wines like this. You know, I really feel I have a sort of there's a sense of purpose in doing it. Of course they've got to work commercially, but that's a dialogue. So all the producers are extremely grateful for your attendance and your questions and your interest, and your feedback is really important. So we've got the producers here. There's still time to go and taste, a bit more time to go and taste and talk to them. And I'd just like to say thank you for your comments. I know we have different perspectives on wine, but the feedback seems to have been, in general, very positive, which is great. And so thank you very much, and keep in touch. And I think Yeah.
The wines have been splendid everywhere, but it seems to me there's no one supplier who can supply a range of Turkish wines. Do you know of anybody who does that?
Yes, they're just, so there's, we do. Some of them are here today. So there's a producer, there's an importer called Taste Turkey, and he imports the wines of Duran, for example, as well as some other producers. 5 of the producers actually got together and have established a UK company holding some stock in the UK so that they can service the adventurous kind of restaurant buyers, retailers, etc. They're called Turkish Fine Wines. And the wines in that enterprise are Arcadia, who we've just tried, Vincra, Ulba, Barbari, who we've just tried, and Pamukkale, who are also here. So you can source those, and I can put you in touch with them. And several of the producers are also in quite advanced talks with importers such as your household name, wine trade suppliers. And then also, Ola's wines are available through Abbott. So there was this one importer, because I think it would be a brave importer who decided he was going to take on, 30 Turkish wine producers, but the accessibility and the terms and being able to source wines in quantities that are workable while you build the market, it's becoming better.
So a related question is there a Turkish restaurant that serves in London that serves?
Wow!
I'm in Belgium.
And Belgium, yes, and
Seven Hills Restaurant.
yeah,
By that person.
so there's the whole thing around Middle Eastern Med cuisine, cooking over fire, all this kind of thing is really pull Turkish wines into the entree. So you've got restaurants that exist now. Babaji, which is one of Alan Yau's restaurants, that has an exclusively Turkish restaurant, Turkish wine list, that's on Shaftesbury Avenue. Vincra wines are there, Severland wines are there, that's Babaji. Some wines don't have a great deal of Turkish wines, they're a bit more price-driven. But we're talking to them. So you've got Babaji, Oklava, which is Laura's restaurant, which is about to open. So this is Laura Christie, who set up wines for Saltgard Group. Her business partner is Selim Kiyazim, who's a very, very highly regarded young British Turkish chef. They're going to have almost entire, so Turkey, Lebanon, Levant. Arabica Bar and Grill, very, very groovy, popular restaurant in Borough Market. They're expanding their Turkish selection. And you also have people from Morrow, the people who set up Morrow Restaurant, are opening a new restaurant in Hackney. They moved their entire team, their chefs, they moved to Turkey for 3 months to live there and learn about food. And they're opening a new, new restaurant inspired by Turkey and Middle Eastern cuisine, which is opening. Justin.
Sarah, hi. Clearly, there's a lot going on here in Turkey. I mean, a lot of interesting wines being made, a lot of interesting varieties being exploited and stuff. How come this is being billed as the first sort of big Turkish wine tasting in London? How come there's been nothing before? How come we haven't been looking at this?
I don't know, because I wasn't really involved before. I think that...
But just generally within the industry, how come we've kind of not been...
It takes a while for things to come together. And also, in Europe, the wine in Europe, wine is an ambassador for its country.
Yeah.
And I think that in Europe, we take for granted all the structures around wine, like protected designations of origin, government funded, and ongoing government funding for generic bodies. Yes, because everything that the Turkish wine producers do, they have to do themselves. They have to come together, they have to set up all these structures for sharing, for reporting, for market research. They have to fund it all. They have to apply for funding for every single project, and they are. I mean, you know, I don't know. I've working in Turkey has made me feel like such a wimp. Oh my God, I would have given up by now. So it's all the structures that we take for granted, they have to create. And the government does want them to export, but you know, we know that there's clearly a bit of ambivalence in the current political outlook. But this now, you know, you've got to look at the long picture, thousands of years, wine's been made here. And wine for many Turks, Turkey is a secular republic, and wine represents this liberal, outward, tolerant, hopeful, you know, centre of civilization, and that there's a real fire in the belly to do it. But a big part of that is all the structures they have to put in place themselves. And lots of things I take for granted. I'm so sorry, but we have to stop now because there's half an hour left. Come and grab me afterwards, any more questions. Thank you very much.